Welcome to Artistic Adventures. We're up to part 4 of our Vampira doll project, and we're going to have a costume adventure. Here we go. Okay, what is this? Do you know what this is? This is a disaster. This is what I spent last weekend doing. I don't know what this is. I mean, it's a skirt, but what, like a flamingo dancer, or I have no idea. All I know is sometimes my designs go completely awry. So, we're going to start over with the skirt for this Vampira doll this weekend. And I'll show you the bustier that I made last weekend while I was making that disaster over there. Alright, so restarting my design process, I've re-envisioned my outfit, and what I've got here are the pieces I cut out for the skirt, and also I'm going to do this collar to come up behind her head, and then we're going to attach some other black design to this. I don't know what I was thinking about that skirt. I really don't. I really have no idea. Anyway, I think sometimes you think you got a vision and you don't, and it's just an adventure, right? Alright, so what I've done is I've cut out these pieces out of a brocade, and I've applied the handy freight check because this material really does ravel pretty bad. And so what I'm going to do for this skirt is I'm going to sew the side seams, but I'm going to leave this side open down to here, and that will be the opening. I'm not going to do an opening in the back. So this will be a little bit different than some of the other skirts that I've made, and then we're going to try it on the doll and see how that works. So basically we're just going to sew this side seam and this side seam, but leave this open, and I'll be right back. And we finished the sewing, and we're going to trim this a little bit and just trim it off some of the threads, and then we're going to turn it. And I wanted this to be a very narrow skirt because I'm going to add some detail that's going to make the upper part fuller with some black material, but I wanted this to be very narrow. So I wanted it to be form-fitting around the hips especially. And it looks like it's pretty well. So I also sewed this collar. I just put a very narrow seam, and I'm just cutting off that point there so that when we turn it, we can get a point on the edge instead of it bunching up under there. So I'm just trimming around that seam right there where I made the point of the collar. And also felt that this is just a little bit too tall, so I'm going to trim off a little bit of the bottom. And then we're going to, that looks better. I think I had it too tall. It's going to come up over the top of her head. So now we're going to turn it, and I'm going to make use of my handy dandy turning tool. If you haven't seen, it has little grippers on the end. So I can grab that edge and pull it through. This works well if you have a small opening to pull through and you can't get your fingers inside. And then I use the blunt end to push the corners out, and that's how our collar looks. But I want to iron it to make sure that it's pressed down really well and make sure those points are pushed out as far as I can get them. So I'll put this black material down underneath so I can iron on it. The top of this table is actually plastic, and I don't want to melt it. So using this little iron that I got, I've used it in some other projects, and I just really am loving it. It's so perfect for crafting and these small dress designs and things. It heats up so fast, and then it's got this little stand, so I can just keep it on, and I don't have to keep turning it on and off like I do a normal iron, and I just put it on the back, and then when I need it again, it's already hot, and I can iron and get on with it. Alright, so we're going to set the skirt aside for a while and work on the bustier. Actually, did this last weekend. This was a rather long process because I had a lot of things I had to let dry in between, as you'll see. But the way I'm doing it is I put this sheer organza fabric down so the
tape won't stick to the body of the doll, and it'll also be the inside of the bustier once I finish it. And so I'm going to use the tape to form the hardness of this corset look. So to make the tape fit around her breast, I'm going to make a small cut on either side of where the breast would be. And then what I'll do is overlap those edges to make a cone shape, sort of, it's not pointed, but you know, to make the cup of the breast, the bustier to go over the breast. So you just fold those two sides over each other, and then you come up with the cup design. And we're going to do two of these, one on each side. So this is the first one, and we're going to put it down, press it down into the fabric. And this way we'll have a nice bustier look. This was not something I was able to do with the Monster High dolls because they had such teeny tiny little bosoms. So it's kind of nice to be able to work with a more normal size bosom. So I'm doing the same procedure on the other side. So I've got my two cups for the bustier. And now what I'm going to do is trim this material a little bit so I can get it into a more manageable size, because I'm going to have to wrap it around her body as I do the taping. And it's going to go underneath her arms, so I'm trimming down the sides there a little bit so it'll go underneath her arms. And then I'm just going to start adding tape. And the first part of the tape that I add is to go around her body to kind of hold the whole structure onto her better, and then I can finish the taping. I ended up having to use this paint. This is really not regular masking tape. This is like for painting, where you paint trim and you put this around it so you don't get paint on it. And it's not really super sticky. I think regular masking tape might be better. I don't think Scotch tape would work as well, just because this does have a little bit of stretch to it, so I'm able to mold it to her body a little bit better. I don't know, you could try Scotch. I don't think it would work as well, personally. This had a little bit of trouble getting it to stick, but that's not going to be a problem because we're going to put some glue on top of it to hold it all together in a minute. So now the design I'm doing comes up a little bit in the back, and then comes down to a point in the front. A very typical bustier look. And then I'm just going to trim here. I trim off the excess fabric, so I make sure I have it symmetrical on the sides, you know, trim off any of the tape that I need to. And then I'm trimming up the top part. I want it to come down into a point between her breast, and then trimming down a little bit on the sides under the arms and around to the back. Didn't trim too much off of that, but that's what I ended up with. And you can, you know, trim these any way you want. I mean, there's endless what you could do with this sort of technique. Now I'm just going to take some E6000 and glue it over the top of this tape, and this is really just to hold everything in place and to give it a more firm look. I'm just spreading it over with my finger, not too thin, keeping a little bit thick so that it's stronger. And you'll notice in this video the nice nails that I have on. Well, the first of the videos started, I had taken them off because this is the first part of this is a week later than this part, but it's funny because I went outside while some of this stuff was drying, and I weeded the front yard, and my nails just kept popping off. So at different times you'll see different nails are missing till we get to the end. It was kind of funny, but that's what happens when you work, right? All right, so I've let that dry while I was weeding, and come back in and, you know, finish up with some just final touches to make sure that everything is kind of smooth and symmetrical. Now this is made to just go around her. As you know, we cut it right down the middle of the back to open it. So I'll show you a little later on how we're going to use some ribbon to be able to make, a fastener in the back. All right, now I'm just painting this with red acrylic paint. And I'm doing this because I plan to put glitter on it, and I want to have a red base under it in case there's areas where you can see through the glitter. All right, so I'll let that dry again. I don't think I did any more weeding, but I did something. And now what I'm going to do is use some Mod Podge. You could use like Elmer's glue. I think they're all the same, really. Mod Podge, tacky glue, something that will stay wetter a little bit longer than the E6000 does, and that dries clear, because you definitely want only your glitter to show. So I had to go retrieve my Mod Podge, and I'm going to do this in sections because I don't want it to dry. I want to leave it fairly thick as I sprinkle this glitter on. I want to have a good base there for it to stick to, and once you get the glitter down, then you can kind of press it into the glue. And just do it in sections, however you want to do it, to make sure that the glue doesn't dry until you have time to get the glitter on there. And if you press it and the glitter comes off on your fingers, like was happening to me, just put some more glitter on top of it. If you have to put more glue, you can put more glue. Now I was using a brush to apply the glue, but then I ended up getting it all over my fingers, and I ended up getting this glitter all over our house. It is everywhere. Let me tell you, I even found some in my underwear. So there's our glitter, pretty ruby glittered bustier, and my fingers are glittered. So I have to let that dry. And as you can see, it comes together right in the back. So we're going to have something to put back there to be able to apply some Velcro to. So I chose to use some red ribbon. You could use ribbon, you could use material, really anything that you can attach to the back of that. So I'm only going to put it on the top part, not the part that flares out over the hips. So I measured that and cut it, and then to make sure that it doesn't ravel and I don't want to have to hem it, I'm going to put some of our usual fray check on either end, because that stiffens a little bit and also, keeps it from unraveling. And this ribbon, this is just your basic satin ribbon, and it'll unravel really fast. So put that on there for two. I did two pieces because I'm going to put a piece on each side to attach some Velcro to, and then we'll set that aside and let that dry. And there's our finished bustier with the ribbon attached, and you can see I've added Velcro. It's on the top on one side and it's on the bottom on the other side, and I just glued it with E6000 directly to the bustier, and I glued the Velcro as well. So now that's how the back will look. It'll have that nice satin ribbon down the back for a closure. And that's a design you can use for a lot of things. If you like steampunk, if you want to make some steampunk corsets, that's an easy way to do that. I've done a steampunk corset also in another video you might want to watch. All right, so we've got our skirt ready. The next thing I'm going to do are I want to have this vision. I want to have like, not tattered, but not really symmetrically perfect leaf shapes or feather shapes made out of this thin black material. And I am going to use the fray check to draw the outline of the shape. So it's almost like a leaf shape. I'm thinking more of a feather shape. Because when I think about vampires, of course I think about bats, but I also think about like ravens and owls and things like that. So this is sort of to mimic the look of sort of a feather design. And I want to put these up at the top of the skirt, and I want them to sort of curve from the waist out to create a little bit of fullness. And that's the reason I wanted the bottom of the skirt to be very, very form-fitting. All right, and now I'm going to show you how I made the cape. I was a little bit hindered in how I made this because of the amount of the red taffeta that I had, and I wanted to line it with red taffeta. So I cut out this black material. This is where I'm folding it in half. You know, I did the one side, and now I folded it in half, and I'm cutting the other side, you know, to make it the same shape on both sides. So I cut this out thinking this will be, you know, the cape size, but then I didn't have enough of the red taffeta to completely make it that big. So as I'm cutting out the red, I ended up having to cut off edges of the black. So you can see there the parts of the black hang over the edge. So as I'm cutting the red, I just cut the black off too. Wasn't a whole lot, but did cut a little bit. So this is not a real full cape. This is really more, you know, just for decoration in the back and, you know, to fit in with the black and the red theme that we have going. So just put those together, and I'm going to sew around, starting on one side of the top where the neck will be, all the way around the side, the bottom, and up the other side, and leaving the neck open because that's where we're going to turn it, and also attach the collar that we made. This is really easy to do, and it turns out looking really nice, so you could do this pretty quickly if you have a sewing machine. All right, so I'm trimming the point off of that corner there, so when I turn it, the fabric won't bunch up under it, and I'll be able to get a nice point once it's turned. Doing the same thing on that side. I did not apply a fray check to this taffeta. If it was something that was going to be exposed, I probably would, but since it's going to be inside the cape, I'm not going to worry about it. All right, so I'm going to turn the cape and using my fingers to kind of press those seams out. And then to get the corners really, really well, you can use something like the handle of a paintbrush or something blunt. You don't want to have it be sharp because you'll poke a hole through the fabric. So you can just use your fingers and try to get the fabric out. Here's where I'm using the end of the paintbrush just to show you how I can use that to go through underneath and poke out those points so they're not flat, and then try to get the two seams to be flat and get out my handy dandy little iron. And I'll leave a link for this iron below if you're interested in it. I've found it to be very handy. I like it better than the other small one I have. You can really get in small places, and it heats up so fast. I really like it. You can do variable heat on it too. All right, what I'm doing now is I'm folding the two edges of the top part inside, and then I'm ironing them so they'll stay because this fabric wants to just pull right out. I'm going to take the collar and stick it down inside in between the two sides that I folded over, the front, the red and the black. And then I want to pin it because I'm going to sew this by hand. You could sew it with a sewing machine. It's not an issue. You could sew it with a sewing machine. I just decided to sew it by hand since I already put my sewing machine away from my previous sewing. It's such a hassle when you're filming things and you always have to keep putting things up and down. So to hide your knot, you want to go inside of the seam of the two folds so that your knot won't be seen, and then you can sew on the outside and sew it together. And I'm just doing a back and forth stitch. I want to get the collar attached to the cape, and then we're going to attach a small black satin ribbon that will be used to tie it around her neck. And like I said, this is like more of a decorative cape than, a typical cape is going to come all the way around into the front. It's really, capes were meant to provide warmth. This one is not going to come over her shoulders even. So I measure that. I want to put that on the outside. And then I'm going to use some of our handy E6000, which is a really nice strong glue and also waterproof. And apply that, a small amount of that right across where the seam is. And I'm going to put the ribbon right across there where we sewed by hand. Making sure that I get it right on the edges too, so when we are tying it, it won't come loose. So make sure you press it down right at the edge and then press it down over the seam. And that's going to look great. And we'll set that aside and let that dry. And I'm pulling off these leaf shapes that I put the fray check on. I usually use aluminum foil so that it won't, so that I can not make a mess and it doesn't stick to it too bad. I had to turn it over so I could see where I put the fray check because it wasn't showing up on the top part. So I'm just going to go across and cut all these out off camera so you don't have to sit there and watch me do that because that's really boring. But I did 3 big ones and then I did some smaller ones. And we'll arrange these on the skirt in just a minute. All right, so that's what we end up with, that sort of leaf or feather shape design. So here's all the ones that I cut out. I'm going to use this product called Stiff and Quick. It's, you know what, it's a spray starch. So if you want to get a spray starch, you could use that instead. This dries, it says in an hour, or you can put it in the microwave for 30 seconds. I will tell you that 30 seconds is not enough. I think I ended up at least 45 seconds, and I ended up putting 2 coats on. And what I want to do is put this paper towel roll under it because I want these to be curved like that. So I ended up having to cut them in 2 because it didn't work right in the microwave. So I cut off the 3 big feathers shapes, and oh, here I'm showing you. I actually used some Monster High Doll shoes on her. They fit her because her feet are flat, but they're jointed at the ankle, so I was able to use them. They fit perfectly. It's another nice thing, and I thought they went well with the outfit. All right, so I'm just looking here to see where on the skirt, how far down the bustier comes, so I know where to place these feather designs. So I want to put the longer ones on first, and then we'll put the smaller ones on top to create that sort of winged feather look. So I'm using this, I found this on AliExpress, the stand that goes up under the dress. I've been looking for something and I've been experimenting. So I can't get it all the way down because how tight the skirt is. But it's going to help me be able to apply this stuff with her standing up and not have a stand around her waist. All right, so you kind of can curve this after it's been in the microwave. You can kind of curve it with your fingers, like, I don't know how to describe it, like pull with one hand and hold it with the other and make it curved. And you can see there it has a slight curve to it. I didn't want it to lie completely flat because I want it to have that curved look. And then we're going to be layering, so it will add even more fullness up at the top area. There are so many vampire costumes now. It used to be, it was just Dracula. And it was like, okay, black suit, white shirt, some sort of red, like, cummerbund or tie thing, and a cape. But especially for women vampires, there's so many different things you could imagine. So many. And my idea for her was something that was elegant, but not traditional. It's got a little bit of something to it that's not like you wouldn't wear it to a prom. I guess is what I'm trying to say, or a queen, Queen Elizabeth or whatever. It's got this a little bit of a tattered look to it, and I don't know why that's important for vampires, but I guess because they come out of the grave, and you think of them in the dark forest, and that they're, you think of birds and wolves and all this stuff. So, this to me was kind of like reminiscent of bird feathers, and I'm overlapping them so that where 2 are together, I'll put one on top to cover where the 2 come together. And then I'm just using smaller and smaller sizes. And you could use as many as you want. You know, I could have used more, make this fuller. I kind of liked to keep it a little bit sleek. Now I did have this one small one left, and instead of putting it on the skirt, because I want it to come out exactly at the point of the bustier, I'm actually gluing it to the underside of the bustier. So all these leaves will be on the skirt, and the only one that will be in the center on the front will be this really small one. But you won't really be able to tell once it's on whether it's attached to the skirt or not. So just taking a last look, you know, making sure everything is symmetrical. I will say that this, I guess it's the stiffened stuff that I put on, did leave a little bit of areas with a sheen, like a white, clear sheen. Not white, but like a clear sheen. So I wasn't exactly thrilled. I wanted them to be exactly black, but you can see there in the light, you'll see some glints of something on those black pieces. So we're going to put this outfit together now. This will be the final part of this part of the video of the series. I have some other things to do to the costume, but we're going to do another video for that. All right, so just tied that around her neck so that it makes the collar flare out behind her head and the cape flare out behind her. And that's the finished costume so far. There you can see the back. I love the way that collar worked. It's really pretty. I just have her hair up with a tie to keep it out of the way. All right, so here's a little closer look of the dress after it was finished, so you can get a better look at it. And you see the ribbon of the tie for the cape hanging down there on one side. I'm gonna do something. I'll do something with that a little bit later. And then a full picture, other than the top part of her hair, to give you an idea of how this is going to end up looking. I think she's coming along well now. I got a rough start with that skirt, boy. I don't know what was going on with that. But, hey, we all make mistakes and we all have adventures, right? So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give me a thumbs up. I'll include the link below, too, if you want to buy me a coffee for $3 and help me buy a new camera. And hope, as usual, that you guys will subscribe, because I just don't want you to miss a thing. And we got lots of exciting things coming up, right? Thanks, and bye.